Lando Norris is the world champion, and some people think he doesn't deserve it. I think those people are wrong, and I'm going to show you data on qualifying, race pace, race win percentage, and Papaya Rules. And I'm going to convince you that Lando Norris is a worthy champion. We'll start with qualifying, where qualifying between the two drivers has been in a dead heat pretty much all year, with Piastri having the edge in the first half and Norris going on a crazy streak in the second half. In fact, since we last spoke about this, Norris has taken the qualifying crown from Oscar. And even though each driver has 15 out of 30 sessions under their belt, the average gap in those qualifying sessions goes to Norris, with Piastri trailing by just over 3/100ths of a second. Now, of course, that's absurdly close. I'm not going to try and make the case that this is a slam dunk for Norris. The fact that the results changed between last race and this race is testament to the fact that this really could have gone either way. The two men are essentially equal on qualifying pace. However, what I will say for Norris in this case is how much he's improved over the course of the year. Oscar did qualify ahead of him in Qatar, but that has not been the story of the second half of the season. Starting in Monza, Norris won 9 out of the 12 qualifying sessions, which is 3/4. Looking at the second half of the season, no one can say that Norris isn't an excellent qualifier, and he's been able to extract one lap pace out of his car better than Piastri 3/4 of the time. Qualifying for 2025 goes the way of Lando Norris. Assessing race pace over the course of the season, I like to look at the median lap for each driver at each track and compare them to one another. And over the course of the full year, Norris's average medium lap time is 87.75 seconds. While Piastri's is 87.8 seconds, 5/100ths slower than Norris. Now again, this is not a big gap. These two drivers are extremely close to each other. But I think putting this into context alongside the qualifying tells you the story that on average, Norris is in both qualifying and race pace just a few ticks ahead of Oscar over the course of the entire year. So race pace for 25 also goes to Norris. Now, Norris has won 7 races this year. And I've heard some discourse about how that is just simply not enough races in the year to prove yourself a worthy champion, which I think is just absolute nonsense. In Formula 1, we tend to have short memories, and it's true that the last 2 eras of Formula 1, with Verstappen's domination and Hamilton's domination before him, we sort of came to expect that the guy who wins the championship should win a really large number of the races across the year. But that's not necessarily how it has to be. Just a couple days ago, I made a video about McLaren's new testing driver, Leonardo Fornaroli, and how he won his Formula 3 season without winning a single race. I don't think that anybody could say that he doesn't deserve his Formula 3 championship. That kind of consistency needs to be rewarded. And it's the same story with Norris. In fact, if we compare him to some champions from the history books, you'll see that Vettel in 2012 won 25% of the races and was on the podium half the time. Similarly, in 2010, he won only 26% and was on the podium 53% of the time. And finally, even Lewis Hamilton in 2008 only won 28% of the races and was on the podium 44% of the time. Look at Norris's statistics. He's just a couple of ticks higher than Vettel 10, Vettel 12, and Hamilton 08, but look at his podiums. He was essentially on the podium for the vast majority of the season. And that kind of consistency, again, is rewarded. And if that doesn't convince you, let's talk about Keke Rosberg, the father of Nico Rosberg. Keke Rosberg won his championship with only 1 win out of 16 races. Much has been said about Papaya Rules. Now, I'm by no means pro Papaya Rules. I've been as irritated as anybody about the fact that McLaren seems to want to meddle in their drivers' races. I don't like it. Now, over the course of the season, Papaya Rules have been enacted 4 times. Once in Japan, once in Silverstone, once in Monza, and once in Singapore. Now, I'm not going to dive too deeply into these. I already made a whole video asking the question of whether Papaya Rules cost Oscar the championship or not. But I do want to talk about Monza. I've said before that Monza was an absolute clown show, and I stand by that. I don't believe that the 2 drivers should have switched positions. I think it was embarrassing. And I honestly think that if McLaren could go back, they would probably undo that change themselves. However, I do want to make something clear. I've reviewed the transcripts of the driver radio during that incident in Monza, and nowhere at any point does Lando Norris ask to switch positions. He came out of that pit stop behind Oscar. He said nothing about it. And then his race engineer Will Joseph told him that they would be re-establishing the order. Lando didn't say anything. In fact, it was only after the race that Lando gave comment for the first time. And I feel like there's a lot of narrative blaming Norris for Monza because he was the beneficiary of that situation, but it wasn't his decision in any capacity. So yes, that was ridiculous. But the point swing from that decision was only 6 points, which is less than the final championship gap between the two drivers anyway. So to say that Papaya Rules made the difference over the season is just simply not true. And in fact, the other 3 examples I gave and go into in my other video were all times where Oscar asked to switch positions and he was denied, only one of which I think was actually valid. Regardless, Papaya Rules were an embarrassing part of the season, but I don't think that we can blame Lando for that. The blame for Papaya Rules falls squarely on the shoulders of Zach Brown and Andreas Taylor, if you were to ask me. I'm not saying that I think Lando Norris is the best driver on the grid. That's a ridiculous statement. I don't think anyone would say that. I'm pretty sure not even Lando Norris would say that. It's obvious to me and most other people that Max Verstappen has continued to improve season after season after season, and he's pushing his form into new heights that I don't even think we thought was possible. And yes, I do agree with Max's statement that if Max was in the McLaren and they had a car as dominant for the whole year, Max would have won the championship. I'm really sure of that. But this is not a sport where the best driver wins every time. It's just not how it works. The driver is only one small part of a huge conglomerate which works together to form teams in this competition. Behind every driver is a team of hundreds and hundreds of engineers and strategists, and behind every race result are a million permutations of things that could have gone wrong, from pit mistakes or collisions. It's a game of chance in a lot of cases. Over the course of the year, Lando and his car have been the best package and scored the most points. And for that, and because of everything else I said, I do think that Lando Norris is a worthy champion.